Hi there, this is Phoenix from Holistic Transformation doing another astrology reading. This week's reading is for the 27th of May up until the 2nd of June. We've got quite a few things going on, still in that halo of the full moon lunar eclipse from yesterday, and we've got Mercury Retrograde on the 31st. So I'm going to disappear from this screen and we're going to go and break the week down. Here we go. Okay, so here's the rundown for the week, the 27th of May to the 2nd of June 2021. The themes for the week are that we are in the afterglow. We're in this reflection period from the full moon total eclipse. We are in a Mercury period of pre-shadow, and the Mercury retrograde begins on the 31st of May, and that will be the third planet to do so. And today we have a mutable T-square, which is different to yesterday's mutable T-square. Following the full moon, we have the moon and Neptune and Mercury and Venus forming this T-square. The shadow healing aspects that are more or less continual themes, they're not really going to change that much from week to week. The ego is still there asking for help alongside your Chiron wound. If your Chiron wound is in Aries, which is the ego, then doubly so, the ego needs help. The challenge from Lilith and Taurus is that regarding our materialism and our relationships, any aspects of codependency, affection or neglect. All of these come up for healing while Lilith is in Taurus, and she's there for another 2 months. Mercury, Saturn and Pluto are also checking our boundaries, our relationships with authority and our comprehension of our immediate realms at this time. There, for the next couple of weeks, there's this triad working together, trying to give us another way of looking at things. And then when Mercury stops, we get more players enter the game of retrograde. So we're going to get a continual challenge for our shadow side coming up for healing, and it's going to be a very interesting summer, an interesting year. Moving on to the 27th of May specifically, this is the chart for 11/11. We can see it's quite top heavy at this moment in time. Breaking it down into the table, which I will run through briefly, trying to keep this video under the kind of half an hour. I don't really want to go any longer than that. So the Sun is in Gemini at 6 degrees, Moon in Sagittarius 20 degrees, Mercury is 24 degrees in Gemini, Venus is 22 degrees in Gemini, so there's that conjunction easy to spot right there. Mars is 20 degrees in Cancer, Jupiter is in the 2nd degree, which is 01 in Pisces, Saturn is there at 13 degrees and is retrograde, Uranus is in Taurus at 12 degrees now, Neptune in Pisces is 22 degrees, Pluto Capricorn retrograde at 26 degrees, Lilith in Taurus is at 24 and Chiron in Aries is at 11. The main aspects and notes of the day are that the next mutable T-square is here, which is Moon and Neptune and Mercury Venus. Mercury is conjunct Venus, Mercury squares Neptune, Mars trines Neptune, Venus trines Jupiter, Mars is in opposition to Pluto. It's a faint opposition because it's 174 degrees, so it's quite on the boundaries. And Saturn squares Uranus, which is a continual theme, and Neptune sextile Pluto. For those that follow the nodes are at 10 degrees Gemini for the north and 10 degrees Sagittarius for the south. And of course this pre-retrograde shadow for Mercury intensifies as we lead up to the 31st. Okay, well I think that yesterday was a big day energetically, and I hope that you were able to connect in with the lunar eclipse energy. Just remember that it's not too late to check in now with it. You can still get some resolution from it for the whole day. You can probably do it the day after or the day after that, but it's strongest in that 3-day halo period. This week is shaping up to be what I would consider the next phase of the learning experience, as we are going to be challenged to look at everything, and yes, I mean everything. 2 weeks from today we have a solar eclipse. which I will probably touch on next week, as there will be preparation to do for it, and most people don't necessarily see the report on the day that it comes out due to upload times. In fact, I would be uploading it about 10 AM, which is around about when the eclipse happens. So I'll try and figure something out for next week. Today, we're still in that halo period of the full moon lunar eclipse, and we still have the moon in Sagittarius before it moves to Capricorn. Mercury and Venus are still together in Gemini, but Mercury is getting ready. It's slowing down before it goes retrograde on the 31st, and we will get to that later. Mars is still in Cancer. Now, Mars has help and hindrance from its relationships with Neptune and Pluto. Mars is trying Neptune in Pisces, whilst being in opposition to Pluto's retrograde in Capricorn. I think I said last week that Neptune is a visionary, and that its place in the final decan of Pisces is looking for enlightenment, evolution, mystic inspiration. And with that, the assistance, Mars in Cancer, is going to try and move forward progressively, whilst the retrograde Pluto Capricorn energy is trying to contest what you were doing. It's difficult to know what will be more of a kind of check or test to see what you're doing. Is this right for me? And what is going to be pure hindrance? So just stay alert. Again, knowing these things is helpful. Mercury is a busy bee this week. So in the run up to going retrograde, it's part of a mutable T-square today, and is in alliance, being conjunct with Venus, and also squaring Neptune. And then of course it is that retrograde. Venus also trines Jupiter, Neptune sextiles Pluto, and Saturn still squares Uranus, which is the theme for all year round. And what all of this might feel like is perhaps partially the calm before the storm, but also this time of afterglow from this lunar eclipse and of great reflection. So much is going on in the world right now which is designed to distract you. It's designed to put you off your game, perhaps stop you from doing the work that you're meant to be doing and you know you're meant to be doing. The lunar eclipse was an amazing time energetically. This amazing time is part of a series of opportunities that are coming up this year, and it continues later in the next week or so. Some people might be experiencing Mercury retrograde early, as it's in the pre-shadow. I think it's very important to understand, whilst there can be many negative aspects to Mercury retrograde, which can be seen with communication devices and people going batshit crazy, Mercury retrograde is also a big time that comes with a big reality check. So don't worry if you're experiencing it early, just call yourself an advanced learner. And finally, for today, we have our second successive day of a mutable T-square, but a different mutable T-square. The moon is having done with the sun and with Jupiter at that lunar eclipse yesterday morning, has moved around. It's advanced and it's now forming a mutable T-square with Neptune and Mercury and Venus. That means that it's a 90-degree square to Neptune and 180 degrees full opposition to Mercury and Venus, which are just 2 degrees apart in their conjunction. Venus and Mercury in Gemini are both very active, communicative positions, being in opposition to the moon in Sagittarius. For just these few hours, it's not a great emotional position though. The squaring up with Neptune in Pisces, and oh my god, Pisces seems to be very active at the moment, is bringing extra attention to the Mercury-Venus conjunction battle with the Sagittarian moon. But again, we're talking more about hours as opposed to days that these sorts of aspects last. So you may find that today your emotions spring about all over the place for a little bit. It might depend on whether you were doing the meditative work, receptive work, being receptive to the newer energies of the lunar eclipse. Again, this is not a telling off. If you didn't get anything done, you're yet to do it, It may have an effect on you nonetheless, but it's not wrong. It's just an opportunity to advance. Neptune in Pisces is quite idealistic, and the Sagittarian moon can be optimistic and adventurous. But this mix of Mercury and Venus could make things a little bit messy. The missing element in this mutable T-square, as I touched on last week, it's like a good balancing act to look for that missing element, which is where the healing can come in from these kind of harsh angled energies. So we have Gemini's air, and we have Sagittarius as fire, and we have Pisces, which is water. So the theme for yesterday's lunar eclipse carries forward. It still points to grounding. It's earth, which is the missing element. So there is a need to show discernment between what is illusion and what is hopeful and optimistic. The moon will then move into Capricorn, which will give a more grounding energy as that T-square dissolves. So moving on to the 31st of May 2021, I've chosen 1:28 p.m. because that is the time that Mercury goes retrograde. That's UK British summertime. So just take that into account when you are making any adjustments if you're not from the UK watching this. Here's the table breakdown. So we have the Sun at Gemini in 10 degrees. The Moon will be in Aquarius at 19. Mercury retrograde 24 degrees in Gemini. Venus has whizzed on to 27 degrees now. So we're getting closer to that critical degree. Mars in Cancer is at 23. Jupiter in Pisces is at 1. Saturn is in Aquarius retrograde 13. Uranus in Taurus at 12, Neptune in Pisces at 23 degrees now, Pluto in Capricorn retrograde at 26, Lilith is in Taurus at 24, and Chiron in Aries is now 12 degrees. The main aspects are the Sun trine Saturn, Sun sextile Chiron, Moon trine Mercury conjunct Venus, Moon squares Uranus, Mars trine Neptune, Venus trine Jupiter, Saturn squares Uranus, and Pluto trine Lilith. Mercury, Saturn and Pluto are all retrograde. So let's talk about that. So we have here the Sun is trine Saturn and sextile Chiron, and these are positive alignments, so the Sun in Gemini is getting assistance with working things out. That need for mental stimulation and assistance whilst we work on our challenges regarding boundaries and rules and our wounds, which is Saturn, Pluto and Chiron. At the time that Mars is in Cancer, it's still trines Neptune, so that's present. And our emotional self, which will be in Aquarius, that's the Moon, at the time of Mercury turning retrograde, will be trine Mercury and Venus conjunct in Gemini. So Venus is also trine Jupiter in Pisces, which equates to a big mutable collaboration between the two. It's the mental stimulation of air and the enlightened energies of Jupiter coming together, which may be hugely assistive in the early stages of this Mercury retrograde. Hooray! Which brings us to the kind of more outer planets. You know, what's going on with Saturn, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto. So Saturn and Pluto are both retrograde already, and they're bringing us a new lens to look at things through. I don't know if you've seen in the news feeds, but we've recently had the 1-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. We've had the shooting of the Black Lives Matter activist Sasha Johnson, and we also had the 22nd anniversary of the death of Canadian wrestler Owen Hart, which, while it kind of seems to pale in comparison to the first two examples perhaps, this is a tale of a corporation, a large corporation, deciding to cut back on its safety techniques and equipment, and it leading to a wrestler falling from the top of a building in a stunt straight to the ring, straight to his death. And not only was that on a live pay-per-view event, but the pay-per-view event continued, showing the complete disregard and contempt for the wrestler and the family, and that's kind of like looking at employee respect, which was completely gone. And whilst that isn't directly relevant to Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, it is prominent that this comes up again in the news. So I know that's a bit of a sidetrack, but getting back to Saturn and Pluto, they are together right now, replaying the energies in different ways at the same time, so we can kind of get a bigger picture. At this time, the forwardly progressing Uranus and Neptune are combining to give us that direct forward moving energy to work with. And that will just leave Mercury retrograde. For the continuation of the week, for reference, the Moon moves through Aquarius and into Pisces on the 1st, Venus moves into its critical degree of Gemini on the 1st, and then into Cancer on Wednesday evening. Venus, representing our love, romantic relationships and love of all things material, is a bit shaken up when it goes from Gemini into Cancer. It moves from that mutable energy into cardinal water. It's moving from kind of mental stimulation, that need for satisfaction and adoration is what comes up with Cancer. I'll go into it more next week because it will seem more relevant by Thursday morning. And then, of course, Mercury becomes the third retrograde planet to join in this retrospective review party. It's game on, so without further ado, Mercury retrograde has a bad rap. I know what you're probably thinking. Red alert, red alert, abandon ship, abandon ship. Code red, Mercury is retrograde. This is not a drill. This is not a drill. And to some respects you're probably correct, but in other ways it's completely wrong. Let's start with the rundown of Mercury. Now, in terms of the astrology setup, it's the communication system of us and everything. It's you talking, but it's also the devices. It's your mobile phone, the computer, your printer, the internet, all those satellites up in space, etc., etc. But it's also more than just technology. It's about ideas, relaying them, working with others as part of a group. You know, it's the whole conversation, you know, that's made up. It's varying degrees of listening and talking, ideally with some understanding and comprehension before the response is relayed. I know that's not always the case, but that's what Mercury is in charge of. Mercury is associated with Hermes and Tot, the Egyptian god, and of course the god Mercury. Whilst Mercury is the mind, and that's got a huge connection with Gemini, the twins, that is kind of in two minds in that respect, it can also be seen as the trickster, and Mercury was known to be deceptive and play kind of cruel tricks. When Mercury goes retrograde, we can find that we have more problems with our technology. We can find that we have more problems with our communications as a whole. Where some people take something the wrong way, or people say things not quite as they meant, and things can become lost in translation, get taken out of context. Friendships can be won and lost during Mercury retrogrades, as well as your laptop or printer can end up getting booted out of the window because, for sake, just work, damn you. So whilst this all sounds like a negative aspect, which most likely it is, there's a much more positive side to Mercury, which goes beyond the negative slur that goes around it. Mercury retrograde, as I've said before, is a chance to review those particular points from a different observer's point. The illusion that happens is that with a retrograde is because our point as the observer has changed, but it looks like the planet has moved backwards from our viewers, our observer's point of view. Taking a new position to view the same point of Mercury comes with a different set of aspects, as everything will have moved in the same way for the retrograde. This time around, Mercury goes retrograde whilst in the sign of Gemini, which is its own placement and is seen as fortuitous by some and not by others. As a fast-moving planet, Mercury does not spend as much time being retrograde as the other planets in one go, but the retrograde periods happen more often. And this is purely down to the fact that it's moving so much quicker and in a smaller orbit than the Earth. Mercury in Gemini is generally articulate, versatile, witty and intuitive. And just because it is retrograde does not mean it has reversed meaning, such as with the tarot cards. At this point, this particular retrograde is occurring during Saturn's retrograde in Aquarius and Pluto being retrograde in Capricorn. Mercury retrograde will last up until, I think, 21st or 22nd of June, meaning that it will run through the solar eclipse and beyond. So the combination of these three retrogrades, with Mercury in Gemini as mutable air, Saturn Aquarius fixed air, and Capricorn cardinal earth, that's communication, the authority, government, and the unconscious mind. So we need to see what the lessons are for this combination for us as individuals and as a collective. Please take note of language being used at this time. Who is saying what to whom? What control systems are being used? What news is being suppressed and why? Is it because it's a load of rubbish? Although, who judges that? Is it because it makes someone look bad? Is it gaslighting? Is it reframing and or suppression? Is it this very forum that you are viewing on right now, or one of the cohorts? Where are you, and where are all of us being led? But there is need to be careful during these times. The new narrative that you'll be forming, things that will come up during this Mercury retrograde, remember to show discernment to where it has come from. Because as much as governments and corporations use spin, and my God, do they, so do the gurus, the influencers, and people within the spiritual community. We need to stay authentic and real during this time. It could be a very good time to reduce all of your internet activity apart from that which you feel is helpful, as the AI, the algorithms, the systematic abuse is revealed. Gemini is not the most grounded of signs, and neither is Aquarius, so we need that Capricorn and Pluto retrospective judgment. I'm not saying don't dive down any rabbit hole, just show discernment in your ventures and adventures. And that is Mercury retrograde. It's also worth remembering that people from your past can come back in touch over this time. It may be that the new lens is making it easy for reconciliations, to learn a lesson, or to allow for forgiveness, and to enable either side or both sides to move on. So there are 5 tips that I've got for getting through the Mercury retrograde periods. The first one is back up all of your important files on your phone, laptop, computer, sacred devices, PlayStation fans, Xbox. Make sure you've got a game save backups. If you can't live without it, then make sure that that file is backed up, either on a stick, or there's many online services, or PlayStation, Xbox have their own. It's not saying that something will go wrong, but there's more likely that something may happen, and you might need to reinstall an earlier version, a saved backup version. So just make sure that you have that to hand, especially during this kind of 3-week period of Mercury retrograde. Number 2, when things are going haywire, if you can, try and take a step back and regroup yourself. Take that deep breath. If you can just find, even if you need to run in the toilet and like hide in the cubicle for 5 minutes and go, oh my god, what there? Just make sure that you take that step back, because it's easy to get carried away and for things to escalate quickly when they're not really meant to, when it's not helpful. You can have periods where you've had all your devices are playing up and somebody says the wrong thing at the wrong time, and that happens during Mercury retrograde. Just be aware of that. Number 3 is fairly similar, but it's ask yourself, is this me? Perhaps Mercury is playing the role of the trickster. Perhaps the trickster is at play today. Just be aware. Number 4 is to take time out when things are going nicely and things are feeling smoothly. Take time out for reflection, to review where you are and what's going on. Mercury Retrograde is a replay function. It allows you to play back emotion, see things from a different lens. It's that different viewpoint that sometimes can make you realise, oh wait, this is what I've been doing, or oh yeah, this is what I'm doing and this is good and I could be better if I did it this way. And it's one of the things that a lot of people don't think about Mercury Retrograde. They just look at the negative aspects, but you can have those kind of aha moments. They can come to you during Mercury Retrograde. And number 5 is the drastic one. In case it is all getting too much for you, know that Mercury Retrograde doesn't last forever. It really doesn't. It's part of the journey, and this part replaying may be bringing the changes that you are seeking. You'll get through this. It's going to be okay. It's all part of this third dimensional experience that we are all going through. Some say that we've chosen this, some say that we were forced into it. Whatever it is, it's all part of the third dimensional experience, with sometimes higher dimensional benefits if you're spiritually aware. And those are the 5 tips for getting through Mercury Retrograde. You made it all the way through to the end of this video. Great, thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or the usual social media. This is Phoenix saying goodbye.